I need, no chase I need, no chase I need, no chase.
Message!
Dr. King's credibility in the movement was shaken drastically by this secret turnaround agreement. It wasn't more so that he made a secret agreement, whether it was to protect his people, protect his image, but the fact that he lied about the secret agreement. On some occasions, Dr. King inaccurately claimed that there was no prearranged agreement. Didn't exist. Agreement? What agreement? I don't know nothing about no agreement. What you talk about, Willis? What you talk about, Jesse? I don't know nothing about no agreement. But under oath, before Judge Johnson, the same judge that hit them with the restraining order, he acknowledged that there had been a tacit agreement. Now, for those of you who don't know what tacit means overstood.
Message!
Right? It's a complete understanding without words. You know exactly what I'm saying without me saying it. He ended up getting a lot of criticism by some of the more radical members of the movement, like James Foreman, calling Turnaround Tuesday a classic example of trickery against the people.
Message!
And to make matters worse, on the night of Turnaround Tuesday, marchers and protesters still ended up getting hurt, some even killed. Among them was Reverend James Reed from Boston. A small group of protesters was attacked by KKK members, beaten with clubs, and set on fire. Reverend James Reed, a white man from Boston, was among them. Now, because he was a white man, he was more likely to get treatment from the hospital, but he was also an activist and a protester, so they feared he wouldn't get the treatment that he needed. So they ended up taking him to Birmingham University Hospital 2 hours away. James Reed died a day and a half later. Blacks all around Dallas County and the Black Belt mourned the death of James Reed, the same way they mourned the death earlier of Jimmy Lee Jackson. But many activists were bitter that the media focused on James Reed's death and pretty much brushed Jimmy Lee Jackson's under the rug. You see, James Reed was white. Not only was he white, he was from Boston.
Shot 5 times in the
So
stomach.
the media paid little attention
Jimmy
to
Lee
Jackson.
Yes.
SNCC organizer Stokely Carmichael once said, "The movement itself is playing into the hands of racism, because you want the nation to be upset anytime anyone is killed. But for it to be recognized when a white man is killed, well, what are you saying?"
Message!
Whenever history brings up the march from Selma to Montgomery, we always forget that it was actually 3 marches. Bloody Sunday on March 7th, Turnaround Tuesday on March 9th, and then the actual 3-day, 57-mile journey from Selma to Montgomery on March 21st. Today we're going to talk about Turnaround Tuesday. And if you haven't seen part 1 on Bloody Sunday, make sure to go back and watch that. On Sunday, March 7th, 1965, close to 8 million Americans watched as state troopers beat and attacked, tear-gassed, batoned, and cattle-prodded up to 700 marchers who were peacefully demonstrating that they just wanted the right to vote. After the events of Bloody Sunday, the whole world knew, or at least they got a glimpse of the struggle that African Americans under the Black Belt were living at this time. Selma had the world's attention completely. That's why people like Dr. King was there, Malcolm X was there, the SCLC, SNCC. Just 2 days later, when some protesters still had bruises and scars from the previous march, they were determined to march again. Now, To try to prevent another outbreak of violence, the SCLC attempted to gain a court order that will prohibit the police from interfering with a peaceful march. But instead of issuing a court order, Judge Frank Johnson hit the whole group with a restraining order, prohibiting any type of marching to take place until he can hold additional hearings later that week. Now, this is the first time that they had to deal with Judge Frank Johnson. So some of the SCLC members were confident that Judge Johnson would eventually lift the restraining order, and they didn't want to alienate one of the few judges that they had on their side that actually felt for their cause at the time. So not only do you not have the safety to march, you now have a restraining order to stay away from the bridge so you can march. And there was another order by Jim Clark, the sheriff of the county, who made it illegal for any more than 4 people to be together. Dallas County and Selma was about 57% black. They had close to 17,000 black residents at that time, and less than 1% can vote. Less than 1% can vote. And this county is a majority black. It was a hotbed for civil rights voting activity. That's why Malcolm X was there. That's why Dr. King was there. That's why SNCC was there. That's why the SCLC was there. And they were determined to march. Now, this is where Dr. King would get some of his biggest criticisms at. So the last thing the President of the United States wanted was a repeat of Bloody Sunday. Okay, keep in mind that there were 600 people on the bridge just 2 days ago at that time. Now there's 3,500 people here now. If you watch the movie Selma, it almost shows President Johnson kind of orchestrating things behind the scenes to help these marchers out. That wasn't the case at all. He did absolutely nothing to help these people until after the fact. President Johnson sent a man named Leroy Collins down to Selma in 1965, a day after Bloody Sunday. Collins' job was to talk Dr. King out of the march, no matter what. And Leroy Collins came up with an idea to make a symbolic gesture. Take you and all your people, march along this route, march to the bridge, say a prayer, and then go back to your church. And that may sound good, but where Dr. King got the flack from is he set up a meeting with his oppressors and their bosses without telling his staff. Dr. King, Leroy Collins, Jim Clark, Albert Lingo. Albert Lingo's the head of the Alabama State Patrol. He signed off on the horses and the batons and the nightsticks and the tear gas. Sheriff Jim Clark is the guy in the video. If you watch Bloody Sunday, make sure you go back and watch Bloody Sunday. If you're watching Bloody Sunday, he's the guy in the video saying you must disperse. Go home or go to your church. Continuing this march will be detrimental to your safety. This man was on horseback beating you just 2 days ago. And this Leroy Collins character, he just comes from the White House to just try to silence this march. So King sets up a meeting with these 3 gentlemen and didn't tell his staff about it. The 4 of them come together and they come up with a secret route to take, led by Dr. King and his 3,000 marchers. Up to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they held a prayer and then they turned around. This way they obeyed the court order that prevented them from making the full march. But you can still go down there and make a symbolic gesture for the world to see.